We talked about just the different feel you had in the spring. Yep. You've added more bodies since then. Just 1 year ago to now, how much more comfortable, confident do you feel with your kids and this D?
Yeah, well, always confident, comfortable. I don't know about that. We obviously still got a lot of work to do, but we're definitely excited, just with the number of, student athletes we obviously have in the program at this point. When we first got here, we're obviously struggling with depth. We feel like we at least have more scholarship bodies. Obviously it's our job to figure out what they can do and, put those guys in the best possible position. So I don't know if I'm comfortable, but we're definitely excited to have those guys here.
Coach, you kind of answered that a little bit, my question, but how much deeper do you feel like your unit can be to help you out throughout the length of ball games this coming season?
Yeah, I think that's a little bit yet to be determined. But again, we do obviously have more scholarship bodies at this point. We just had a defensive meeting. My message to those guys, we're going to play all the guys who've earned the reps. But the reality of it is you got to earn it. But do we have more bodies? Absolutely, and that's a good thing. That's a great starting point. But obviously, as we continue to divvy out reps and, who has the honor of running out there with that starting group, that'll be based on the work that those guys put in. And I know those guys are eager to get to work. So we'll find out soon, exactly how much depth we will have.
A two-part question on your secondary. First off, you've had different guys that are stars and safeties and corners moved around. Can you give us kind of a couple of guys at each position where your starting point is in your secondary?
As far as
who are your corners, who are your stars, who are your safeties?
Yeah, again, it's a lot of moving parts that way. We had guys obviously that played some snaps. Was starters from last year. With Warren Burrell comes to mind. Obviously McCullough, Tank played a ton of reps for us. Flowers have played a ton of reps for us, but the reality of it is, and I know this may sound like coach speak, but just like we did in the spring, we moved guys to a lot of different positions. Trying to figure out what our best combination of guys that we can put out there on the field, so to speak. You start talking about just Wesley Walker, who's obviously just got here. T-Mac, who's been here, didn't play a ton of reps for us on defense, but was a standout on special teams. T-Mac had a really good spring. We're excited about Wesley getting here. But again, we're going to move those guys all around, try to figure out who is the star, who is the safeties, and obviously the corners. But I think it's a good problem to have, again. But we want to coach defensive backs, not necessarily safeties, stars, corners. We just want to put the best combination of guys out there we can.
The second question on that, what's the process for figuring out what that combination is? Is there an urgency week 1, week 2 to get that set, or can that go all the way up to kickoff?
Yeah,
who fits where?
It's always an urgency. Again, we talked about that a lot, just in terms of what our mantra is, love, trust, and urgency. So, I don't think you can figure anything out of one practice. Obviously you got to continue to rotate guys in, continue to put guys in different spots, see how they adjust to it. But yeah, we like this thing to be figured out, as quickly as possible so you can continue to game plan and, do some different things. But I think it's going to be some really fierce battles. I really do. I think guys that obviously played a lot of significant snaps coming from last year will have great confidence coming in, but we have some young guys that are itching, to prove what they can do. So I think it's an exciting time for us on defense and UT in general. And, like I said, we just can't wait to get to work.
Do you know what you have yet in Andre Turrentine and Wesley Walker, and how much do you kind of look forward to getting out there and, getting your hands on them in a more practice-oriented basis?
Yeah, I mentioned Wesley already, but Andre as well. I couldn't tell you exactly that we know exactly what we got. Obviously I remember both young men coming out of high school, and, obviously Wesley had a body of work that he had at the other place. So, but until you actually get them in your system and have an opportunity to, coach the things and coach it the way you want to coach it, you're not quite sure. But I will tell you, they've been nothing but spectacular in terms of their approach, their work ethic, them wanting to be great. So they've been great in our room. I know those guys have really, their teammates have really adjusted to him well, and excited to have them in our family. So we're just excited to see what they can do. These practices that we got coming up. So I'm hoping they're as good as advertised, because we obviously need them, and along with the other guys, to be able to help us, take that next step.
Tim, what have you seen from Juwan Mitchell and just your expectations for him this fall camp?
Yeah, well, obviously, Juwan was a guy who, had some really significant reps for us last fall before he got injured. He started to work his way back a little bit in the spring. obviously the health issue is always the very first thing. You got to make sure he's feeling healthy, which I think we've turned the corner that way. And then obviously we'll see what he does as he starts to compete for the job. Obviously, you have Banks coming back and Beasley coming back. You brought in Elijah. You feel really good. Solon Page, comes to mind. Pack, Garland, comes to mind. We feel like we have pretty good depth that we're starting to build at that position. But we obviously felt really good, about Juju or Juwan Mitchell. So it's really up to him and, continue to see what kind of development he's made during the summer, and see if that leads to him, being able to contribute again, which we would hope it does.
Not to belabor the point on the moving parts in the secondary, but with Christian Charles, that was sort of seen as an experiment, I guess, maybe this spring because of the lack of depth you guys had trying him at corner. Did you guys kind of let him continue that work at corner this summer? Did he kind of move back more to safety, or where do you guys have him at least starting off?
Yeah, I think he'll primarily start off at corner, but understanding that he has the ability to move back inside. I mean, he's the poster child for, again, what we're looking for, guys that are very interchangeable, corner skills, but the mentality and the physicality to be able to play inside. So, he'll get an opportunity to win one of those jobs at corner, but he'll also get a chance to win one of the jobs at, safety. So it just depends, but right now, based on how we left spring is the way we'll start it, and then we'll go from there.
I know practices haven't started yet, but do you feel like from a linebacker standpoint, you can go from playing 3 guys last year to maybe playing 6 or 7 guys in the rotation?
Yeah, you would like to. Again, it's hard to say until you get going, but, if you're just basing it on pure numbers, you would like to think that, whether those guys play significant snaps just on special teams, you would like to think some of those guys will have better confidence, going into the fall. Again, when you start talking about Apache or William Mohan, you start talking about, again, Garland. Those guys have played significant snaps, even if it was on teams, which obviously lends itself to some confidence. So we'll be disappointed, if we don't have better depth there based on the number of bodies that we have. But as I stated earlier, you'll get what you earn. Those guys have to earn the right, at linebacker, D-line, secondary. We're not going to ever put the program in jeopardy. We're going to put the best guys out there that gives us the best opportunity to win. I think those guys understand that, we would like to play as many guys as we can. I think it helps us in the long run. Obviously, it helps us in the short run, based on how we play. And if they're able to come along, they'll definitely get out there and play.
Coach, 2 things. One, Nick Saban said that what your cornerbacks can do determine what you can do on defense. Do you subscribe to that theory?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that, particularly based on the kind of scheme that you play. If you're a scheme that, asks your corners to play a lot of man-to-man so you can be able to, load the box, I think traditionally, I think that's a solid statement. We got to figure out, again, who our best corners are. We like to be able to play with at least 3 at the bare minimum. You like to be able to play 4 in a perfect situation. And obviously, once we figure out that position, we continue to see where the best guys are, whether it's star, safety, et cetera. But, I think that's a strong statement, and, I would definitely echo that.
And secondly, Jeremy Banks has shown up on a lot of all-SEC preseason teams. Do you see him having the ability to be an all-SEC player? I do.
I mean, he's one of those guys that, loves the game of football. He plays extremely hard. He's very athletic. He's tough. He has all the traits that you look for from a linebacker perspective. I thought really he was just scratching the surface on how good he could be last year. I think he's worked very hard during the spring to try to shore up some things that we identified as liabilities. I think if he continues to work at, the things that we talked about, I think it's no reason why, he shouldn't be one of the better linebackers in this conference, if not in the country.
Coach, I think you guys last season over 100 tackles for loss. How did that success happen, and how do you kind of replicate that this season with maybe some new guys up front?
Yeah, obviously, our philosophy and how we go about our business will never change. We want to be aggressive in everything that we do, whether we're attacking with our 4-man front, bringing a 5th or a 6th defender. What that ends up being in terms of tackle for losses, that's yet to be determined. But we're never going to change our mentality. We want to be extremely aggressive, in our play, coming off the ball, attacking from different angles. And if it ends up, obviously, whatever the stat is that you threw out, that's awesome. But really, we're just trying to, stay to our identity, which we think bodes well for us to be a successful defense and help the team win.
You were talking about the numbers and feeling better with better numbers in competition. Can you elaborate on that with your defensive line specifically, and how much that can help you with four-man rushes and not having to send as many on blitzes?
Yeah, I think it always starts up front. You know, as cliche as that may sound, you know, the reality of it is the more guys you can play up there, you know, those guys have to strain, and they're in confrontations every single snap, and they're typically the ones that'll get tired the fastest. So I think Coach Gardner and the rest of the staff have done a great job, you know, again, identifying some of the weaknesses that we had up front and trying to get that thing corrected. But I think, you know, the ability to play more guys, number one, it gives that competition, makes everybody, you know, strain a little bit harder, you know, to earn that playing time. But I also think it lends itself to those guys being a little fresh, you know, coming down the back stretch when you really need those guys to be able to close some games out. So we're hoping that, you know, we'll develop some more depth that way, you know, whether it be inside or on the edges. And we'll obviously find out as we continue to move forward. But definitely having the ability to play more guys up front, we think bodes well for us.
Tim, Brandon Turnage is a guy who's kind of had a really interesting year and a half. He had the one really big game last year, a couple other solid games, and then, you know, an injury situation, didn't play a lot in some other games. Where is he physically now, and what are y'all looking to get out of him heading into the season?
Yeah, you know, just like I said earlier, you know, he's one of those combo guys, you know, very similar to Christian Charles. He has the ability to play corner. We also think he has the toughness and the awareness to be able to play inside. So he'll get his opportunities, you know, whether it's at star corner, maybe inside, you know, just depending on how everything shakes out. But you know, he's one of those guys that you just love having on the team. You know, he's very positive. You know, he's obviously a really good athlete. You know, we're going to have a hard time keeping him off the field. You know, like I said, I think we'll have, you know, some really good battles, you know, in camp. And, you know, we'll kind of see how it shakes out. But I think he's heading in the right direction. I think he's feeling healthy, you know, which is obviously half the battle.
Coach Banks, Coach Heupel was really complimentary of Byron Young in his offseason. What kind of growth have you seen from him?
Yeah, tremendous, you know, and I would say first just from a leadership perspective, you know, we put him in some different situations during the offseason where he had to be more verbal, and I thought he answered the bell. I don't think that was his natural instinct, is to be able to lead from the front, but he's worked very hard to be very vocal, and I think as he's become more vocal, he's become more confident. He obviously has a skill set. You know, he plays extremely hard. I think he worked very hard to try to refine his technique and his overall knowledge of the game. And I think we'll start to see that pay some dividends moving forward. So I'm excited about him. You know, I would echo this for him, the same thing that I said about Jeremy Banks. I think he has the ability to be one of the better players in this conference, if not the country. But obviously he's got to continue to work at that pace, and so far he's done that.
What's the next step for Tyler Barron to be as good as he can be, and moving down the line, will that help him kind of reach that potential?
Yes, and again, I hate to sound like a broken record, but once again, I'm excited about Tyler. You know, he's healthy. You know, Tyler's a guy who has, you know, unbelievable, you know, strength, power, speed to power ratio. And he's obviously a guy that's really, really bright. You know, he's able to play the Leo spot for us. He's also played the end spot for us. He has that versatility that I spoke about with the corners, being able to play inside and outside. He's a guy who has the ability to be able to play either side of our defense, you know, and has the ability to slide inside, you know, based on situations. So I think as he continues to, you know, take care of his body and as he stays healthy, I think he has a chance again to have a really big year for us. And I think he would tell you the same thing. You know, he's worked his tail off this offseason, and I think he's primed for a big year.
With the exception of more depth, playing more people, where do you expect this defense to grow this year? And will you be more multiple? Do you add a lot this offseason schematically? How do you expect this defense to grow besides playing more people?
Yeah, I think it's no different than what I told you guys last year. A lot of it is, but you know, we have core beliefs in what we want to do, but you know, a lot of it is based on our personnel. You know, so as we continue to figure out what these young guys can do, some of the freshmen that you know that just got here, even if they came in the spring, continue to figure out what their strengths and liabilities are. You know, we'll be able to highlight that, so to speak, in our package. And then the same thing with some of the transfers that we got in here. How can we best take advantage of their skill sets? And that would dictate, how multiple we are. We obviously want to do some different things and try to keep the offenses guessing best we can. But at the end of the day, it's all about playing to the strength of your team, the strength of your players, and highlighting the right guys. And we'll continue to stay that path.
Thank you, Coach.
All right. Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much.